It's the 20th century. We're in the United States, only a few hundred kilometers from Minneapolis or Detroit, somewhere in South Dakota. In other words, in the middle of nowhere. It is almost unbearably cold, and yet these men have been riding for over 8 days. They are Sioux Indians. It is 100 years to the day since the last battle between their ancestors and the American Army. They are following the trail which one of their great chiefs, Bigfoot, had ridden along before being massacred with all his men. It was the 29th of December, 1890, at the Battle of Wounded Knee. The Sioux haven't forgotten. They haven't forgiven. That is why they ride on Bigfoot's trail. Horses are a symbol of the glorious past of the American Indians. They are the companions of the finest moments of their civilization, which today is in danger of extinction. For the Sioux, horses were a sign of wealth, the ideal companions to this nomadic people. But let's forget the word Sioux, which was invented by a French trapper, and rather use their true name, the Lakota. Very few Lakota can afford the luxury of owning a horse. Nowadays, unemployment and poverty are predominant in the reservations. The organizers have shown a wealth of imagination to find the horses needed for this ride. The preparations made for it are a clear indication of the difficulty of the task. Among the riders, there was a 7-year-old boy who had decided to accompany them as an initiation in order to become a warrior. The dignitaries are ready to take part in the adventure. At their head, Arvil Looking Horse, the keeper of the sacred pipe, which was entrusted to his people by White Buffalo Woman. A prayer circle was formed around Arvil. This circle was originally broken by the Wounded Knee massacre. This ride will make the circle whole again. And the people must now dry their tears, although they'll have to suffer in order to recreate the Lakota Nation. At the end of that December, the temperature had fallen below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 20 degrees Celsius, and they have to cover over 250 kilometers on horseback in this surprising but merciless country. It is difficult to imagine the suffering they endured. To be a warrior, one must be proud and strong, and must harden oneself and suffer. The boy was convinced of this. He belongs to the generation which must free the Lakota Nation. His name is Josh Guerrero. that time, Josh was one of the most enthusiastic. He had agreed to spend 6 or 8 hours on horseback, to share the life of the adults, to eat like them, and also not to complain of the frightful conditions in which the ride took place.
Over here!
It's no easy matter to meet the needs of some 100 ice-cold riders in the Middle West Plains, particularly when they lack everything. Generosity and solidarity become the rule. But it has always been thus in the Lakota Nation.
Bring the whole thing.
The Lakota's vision of the world is that of a circle in which he must fit harmoniously. The sky is round, and I have heard that the earth is round. The wind whirls, birds make round nests, the sun rises and sets in a curve. The moon does the same. Both sun and moon are round. The seasons form a circle. A man's life is a circle from childhood to childhood. And so our tents are round and are always placed in a circle. Our nation is a circle made up of many nests where we bring up our children according to the will of the Great Spirit. In 1890, Black Elk described his universe in these terms. The riders must cross the Badlands Mountains. At the Centennial Ride, Arvil Looking Horse and his people passed that way in memory of the old chief who had been assassinated. Bigfoot and his clan had hoped to lose the American cavalry by slipping into a small pass which today bears his name. Why did these men do this? To revive the honor of their nation, perhaps also to observe the 7 great principles of their faith, to honor the Great Spirit, to pray with the sacred pipe, to respect nature which was entrusted to them, to love their neighbors and to suffer for them, to help the old and the sick, to live in harmony with all those around them. Perhaps lastly, as a form of peaceful defiance towards the Western world, which judges the genius of a civilization by the traces it leaves. According to these values, Indian civilization was of little consequence. Its only wish was to live in harmony in its surroundings. Faced with the disorder prevalent in our materialistic world, this wisdom appears as a source of inspiration. At the end of those epic 15 days, the riders reached their goal at last, Wounded Knee, the site of the battle, of the massacre, say the Lakota. For the last time of the ride, the horsemen formed the circle around Arvil Looking Horse. At the cost of an enormous effort, Josh accompanied them right to the end. On that day, exactly 100 years after the massacre, Arvil Looking Horse announced that the time had come to dry one's tears and to look to the future generation. 6 years later, we found Josh again. He was much taller and had filled out as well. Josh lives in a small town in South Dakota. He hasn't forgotten the centennial ride. His bedroom walls speak for him. Eagle feather ornaments and pictures of buffaloes testify to the Lakota's attachments to their immemorial roots.
I saw a house today. A place I think it'd be much better for us. It's so big here.
With dignity, Josh's mother runs a bar where the customers are too often drunk after 2 beers. Alcohol causes a lot of damage here. Idleness is also a source of great concern in Lakota land. This year, Josh will not take part in the ride. He has no horse, nor is he very eager to set off again in the cold.
You cared for your horses. You took care of the horses, you fed them, and you watered them. You know, before we started out.
Eagle Hunter was with Josh in the Centennial Ride. Eagle Hunter evokes Wounded Knee. In 1890, the Lakota lacked everything. Poverty was such that the American government had to distribute food to these, the first inhabitants of the American continent, who had been parked in reservations for 30 years. Wovoka, a Lakota orphan who had been brought up by Mormons, affirmed that he had had a vision of Christ, which gave him the inspiration for a rite which would bring back food and prosperity to his people. This rite was called the Ghost Dance. The U.S. government was concerned. It considered the Ghost Dance to be a war dance. On December 15, Sitting Bull was arrested in his camp and imprisoned. The next day, he was shot in his cell by 2 soldiers of Indian race. The members of his clan then sought refuge with another chief, Bigfoot, who decided to flee southward to avoid suffering the same fate. But the 7th Cavalry caught up with him near Wounded Knee. Eagle Hunter continues the tale.
On December 28th, the Bigfoot was surrounded and he flew a flag of truce. The battle itself lasted only a few minutes, and the warriors and women and children that were killed were 283. They were given the Congressional Medal of Honor, and that's the highest award that a soldier can receive. And they've given 34 of these medals to the soldiers of the United States Cavalry for killing defenseless people and raping the women.
Eagle Hunter is not ready to dry his tears. With Josh, he recalls the unbelievable Centennial Ride.
What do you think of the first day ride,
After a while, then bouncing on that horse so much it started to hurt. But we got there. That was a long ways though.
Yeah. Where'd that pull off? I just gave him some crap long ago.
That first day, we went 35 miles that we rode from Bridger. Can you see a little of that with the people that fled for their lives, the Bigfoot band,
That first day, I was cold. It was 0 below, and I can feel how the people that went before us felt. It was pretty cold then. Back then, all they were half naked. We had clothes and everything on that kept us warm.
It takes strength, it takes discipline, it takes a lot of hardship, going over there, but you did it, and I guess you have a right to be proud of yourself. You felt that you accomplished something that no ordinary young Lakota boy could do. To you, what is a Lakota today, though?
I really don't know.
And yet, 6 years ago, Josh was the pride of his whole community. During a ceremony improvised at the end of the ride, the elders had given him an eagle's feather, the insignia given to warriors who had carried out an exploit. And that year, Josh had accomplished an exploit. Each participant had come forward to congratulate him, for it was time to relay pride to the next generation. And Josh belongs to that generation which represents great hope. The dignitaries gathered at Wounded Knee to take part in the powwow that closed the centennial had danced almost all night. The elders, the chiefs, the women, the Lakota people who were usually so divided, so critical at the idea of uniting in a common cause, had joined forces on that occasion. This year, the temperature is even lower at Bridger. Bridger is near Bigfoot's camp. It is the village from which the ride sets off. Here, as in most villages of the reservation, precarity is the active word. The local economy is based on resourcefulness and small jobs, daily improvisation. Karen Duchesneau was chosen by the elders to organize this year's ride. It'll be a ride of young people. With 2 friends, Karen has spared neither time nor energy in finding the horses and the equipment necessary.
The one I rode that time? What's his name again? Huh? Oh, yeah.
Burke is attending to his horse's hooves. Snow can seriously wound horses, and their legs have to be carefully bandaged to avoid frostbite.
Oh yeah, pink, blue on the inside, pink on the outside.
Many youngsters plan to take part. Karen and her friends managed to borrow horses for the young people who promised to accompany her on the ride. But, contrary to the centennial year, the corral is much larger than needed to accommodate the number of horses. A few hours later, the sun is already high in the sky, but the fact remains, the participants haven't yet arrived. Perhaps they'll catch up with Karen a little later on. Sam Tall is one of the organizers of the ride. He's very involved in the Lakota tradition. He knows the region well. He'll be their guide. Sam fixes an eagle's feather to his horse's bridle so that luck will be with them. The last participant is Luke Black Elk, the great-grandson of the big chief Black Elk. With Josh, Luke was in the Centennial ride, and Luke is setting off again this year. Sam blesses the horses and their riders. It's high time to leave. The families are worried. In order to gain time, the young people are going to ride across country to reach an isolated refuge and spend the night there. But the roads leading to the refuge are blocked by snow. It will be impossible for the cars to follow them or to provide assistance. And from that point on, they will be left to their own devices for 2 days. The landscape extends as far as the eye can see, crossed by never-ending barbed wire. To some extent, an image of the Lakotas themselves. Magnificent fauna survives in the cold in restricted freedom. In the Lakota country, there are limits which it would be unwise to try to cross. At twilight on the second day of their ride, the youngsters should have passed the Badlands, an almost lunar landscape which juts up from the South Dakota plains. The tension is rising, for the young people should have reached Bigfoot Pass. Late in the evening, Karen, Sam, Luke, and Burke appear at last in the distance. They had lost their way. The blizzard had covered the landmarks and wiped out their traces, but they were here at last, although absolutely exhausted.
Just call 685-6711. That's 685-6711 for service with a smile in all kinds of weather. Bennett County Co-op.
Eagle Hunter wasn't happy with Josh's reply when he asked him what the word Lakota meant for him. So Eagle Hunter decides to take his wife Maple and Josh to Wounded Knee to join the young people at the end of their ride.
Have a safe and happy New Year and celebrate at the H&H Barn.
But he doesn't want to take the shortest route to Wounded Knee. He prefers to show Josh the landmarks of the history and tradition of his people.
The sacred ceremonies, this is where they all started from. They brought the buffalo cat pact here. The beginning of Lakota people.
The first site, of course, is Devil's Tower.
Devil's Tower is known to the white people, and as the Lakota call it, the Hochokapaha, which means the center point of the Indian country. The beginning of the Lakota people is right here. And the sacred ceremonies like the Sundance, like the Sweat Lodge, they all started from here. And this butte here is most sacred to the Lakota people, and it should be kept that way, and it should be remembered as that way. O tokashila, na tokashila piki, uki toksana, unki waka biaumpi uka hoyachicha.
Fathers and grandfathers who are around us in spirit, forgive us for the bad things we have said and done. I pray for our well-being and for the help that we need. On this day, have mercy on us. So be it.
Kama kataki ahitu apina unshunkila po ea hoiwalo hohichitulo.
Maple, Josh, and Hunter take a quiet moment to offer their ancestors a little tobacco rolled in some red cloth. Today, Devil's Tower is used by rock climbers for training. Is this to be considered an insult? For centuries, the Lakota lived in harmony with the eagle and the buffalo, which the Creator had placed in their keeping. A nomadic people, they followed the buffalo wherever it went. Their survival depended on it. Meat, clothing, teepees, tools, and weapons came from the buffalo. They protected this land from outside aggression and fought only to defend their territory and their families. The chief ruled with a council, according to rules established to maintain peace within a small group. Could it be said that the Lakota invented democracy? Through their strength, the Lakota thought that they would thus live in peace and would always find a territory where they could hunt the buffaloes. The Americans undertook to prove the contrary. The Black Hills are in Lakota territory. They consider them to be sacred land. In one of the innumerable treaties which the American government never kept, the Black Hills were granted to the Lakota. The future, however, decided otherwise. Mount Rushmore is called the Temple of Democracy. Hundreds of tourists throng there every day. For Eagle Hunter, the word Rushmore rings like a death knell.
Josh, these presidents up there all represents what they took from the Lakota people. As you see, the Mount Rushmore was put in the center point of the Black Hills. And what they took from us is not only the sacredness of the Black Hills, but they also took the livelihood of the Lakota people.
What about the trees, Dad?
They survive on the firewood, and then they eat the deer and the elk during the winter months, you know. So this is very important to us, you know. This land here, the Black Hills are very sacred.
What about the trees, Dad?
1868 treaty says that this land should be ours, you know. But they discovered gold, and then they took the land from us illegally, you know. But we're still maintaining that this is ours because not only because it's sacred to us, but because that we used to survive in the Black Hills, you know, from the cold.
The American government signed over 300 treaties with various groups of American Indians. They were never respected. Recently, President Clinton signed an act conferring on the Lakota the title of nation. Will this enable the Lakota to at last benefit from their territory? Kili Radio is a real link between the members of the community. The announcers speak out openly about local current issues.
KILI 90.1 FM, the voice of the Lakota Nation.
You're listening to it on KILI 90.1 FM. You're listening to the Milo and Charlie program this morning. And, well, you know, there's a, what we call a colonial language that's in place here, you know, tribe and Sioux and things that what everybody else calls us, we don't have to accept. We as Lakota people on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, or however you want to call this, you know, we're always going to be thinking ourselves as a self-culture, and I don't believe that is for one bit, you know. If we're going to be an Ogallala, let's be an Ogallala people. It's that for opportunity for our young people. Are we going to give them a chance? We got a lot of educated young people on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation got no jobs. The question of the buffalo itself, you know, that's the symbol of rebuilding, recreating the Oglala Lakota Nation into the 21st century. And yet, Ashkatan, they're playing with it. You know, we call it a sacred animal. You know, Lakota people say, that is our brother. That is our brother. And yet we're going out there and we're doing all these things around it. Somebody even cut the buffalo fence and let a bunch of buffalo out, so they were killing them all over the place. You know, what kind of deal is that?
Eagle Hunter could not cross the Black Hills without making a detour through Custer City. Custer, a name which echoes like an insult to Lakota ears.
Custer was known to the Lakota people that he was an Indian hater. He has no respect for old people, women, the warriors, or the children, and for that reason, that he was the most hated white man at that time.
General Custer was in charge of enforcing the law. That is to say, that law imposed day after day in the West. The pioneers were arriving, and Custer made it a point of honor to free up territories for the newcomers. It was a period of collective madness, which ended with a succession of crimes. The massacre of the buffalo deprived the Lakota of their resources. 3 million head of buffalo were killed for sport in less than 2 years. The gold rush deprived them of precious land. And the advent of the railway was to add the final touch to the downfall of the nomads of the plains. There was no resisting the iron horse, which disgorged settlers and merchants bringing weapons and alcohol, modern culture. Milo Yellowhair has been fighting for 30 years to promote the cause of the Lakota. He misses no opportunity to bolster the pride of his people.
The voice of the Lakota Nation.
I want to say to those riders, I want to say thank you to them, Wopilatkanka, for their efforts, and also the young men who participated here on the Pioneer Indian Reservation. It's that type of commitment and that type of effort that's going to make a lot to reinvent our nation that everybody can be proud of. This horseback ride is not only in memory, but also to respect and remember the history of the Lakota people. And to let people know that the young people got some heart and they got some spirit and they got some, they know what to do. Anyway, we want to tell some guys out there, especially Sam Tall out there in Manderson, one of the leaders of the ride, and also Corky Last Horse, and some of you guys, especially like Karen Duchesneau up there, and also Luke. You remember Luke, huh? Remember he was just a little guy then when he first started out in 1986, I think it was. Little guy that was playing in the snow with no jacket on. I guess he must have been getting toughening up now, so he can run this thing. But he's quite a quite a young man these days. And, yeah, he's got long hair and tougher than nails. They were out there singing songs, and I talked to them a little bit about how cold it was. And when they left up there from Cheyenne River, he said, man, it was real cold.
On the 6th day, the 20 or so riders are nearing their goal. Corky Last Horse leads the small troop. They decided to see the ride through alone. No elders accompany them according to their wish. But is this really a way to transmit a tradition? Karen has left her companions for a few hours. She is the guest of Kili Radio. She opens her heart out to Milo's microphone.
What does that do to you? I mean, as an individual, is it important to you, or well, I guess it should be. I shouldn't be asking you that, but because I know it is. But what does it mean? What do you think that your efforts can say to other people?
I feel like we do this ride and it's really hard, and we do it partially to honor our ancestors, to honor their sacrifice, everything that they did that assures that we're still alive today as a people. And because I know it would have been easy for them to give in, surrender our ways and become white. It would have been so much easier for them than to fight. But they fought, and here we are now, and we still have our ways. Some of them, most of them. A lot of things are lost, and we're trying to bring some of that back.
Each day of the ride is devoted to a particular problem: violence, drugs, alcoholism, which are all violations of the traditional values of the Lakota. Every evening, they form the circle to sing or to pray. This is the evening before their arrival at the Wounded Knee Memorial. They have covered nearly 150 kilometers in 5 days. For both men and horses, it's time it should end.
I used to believe in ours.
The Lakota Nation, we're having a hard time as a people today. We're losing touch, with our ways, and we're struggling, always having a hard time. And to me, what we do gives strength to the people, especially the elderly, because, I can only imagine what it's like to go through your life and then look around and there's your youth drinking and doing drugs and raising hell and disrespecting everything, the lands, the people, the elderly. And so to me, they can look at us, at least some of us from the 7th generation, we care, and we want to do something, we want to change, we want to make a better life for the younger ones. And I hope that what we're doing is giving them hope and giving them confidence in us, so that, because I imagine it's pretty hopeless when you look around, because even for me, I'm still young and still it seems hopeless. You look around and you think, what can I do, What can I do that's going to change things for my people? And this is what we're doing. This here today, what we finished up. This is one thing that we're doing. A lot of us do other things. We sundance, we go on the hill, and even in our daily lives, we try to live our lives in a good way and help our people, help our elderly, help our youth. But this is a major accomplishment for us for the year. This is something that we commit ourselves to do, and now we're done. We're done. We have.
Happy with it, huh?
Yes.
This morning, Sam has put on clothes made of buffalo hide. He has a personal reason for doing this. He explains shyly.
I had a couple dreams about some buffalo. And in this dream I had about these buffalo asked me to do a ceremony. And in this ceremony, they asked me to heal one of them young buffaloes that were sick. And there was no time. In a way that if I didn't do anything about it, these buffalo are gonna die. So with that, and that remembering that dream, I asked my dad to get me ready and help me honor the Buffalo Nation. Because we are a Buffalo Nation. Without the buffalo, we can't be here today, We are just like the buffalo. We're extinct people, we have little left. Really difficult for me to understand because I'm confused. Still going through a world of confusion. I have a white man's knowledge in my brain and a Lakota speaking from my heart. So it's kind of confused. The balance is off, So I'm trying hard to be Lakota, yet I'm sitting here talking like a white man.
December 28, the day of the arrival at Wounded Knee. Corky blesses the horses and riders for the last time. The young people say a last prayer to honor the ancestors and to find the strength to continue to the end. Mothers and grandmothers have joined the young people to encourage them. They are proud to note that tradition is not completely lost. Wounded Knee. This endless plain symbolizes the misfortunes of the Lakota people. On a small hill, the traditional graves are placed beside Christian graves. The memorial of the massacre is built around the common grave, at the very spot where 280 people were thrown into it with Bigfoot. Josh, Maple, and Eagle Hunter arrive in time for the anniversary celebration. They find it hard to hide their emotion. During the centennial ride, the elders said that it was time to dry the tears and to forgive. But Eagle Hunter can't forget the horrible events. Today, there are not more than 50 or so people gathered in front of the memorial to honor the memory of the dead, a much smaller number than at the centennial. Is this to be seen as a mark of indifference? Probably not. American civilization, as though fearing an imaginary threat, still weighs heavily on life in the reservations. But it cannot snuff out that small flame which burns in each Lakota. Despite his age, Bigfoot's grandson has come in person. He sings in memory of his glorious grandfather. There are still a few who believe in the revival of the Lakota Nation and in the return of the buffalo which will free its people. But these few men and women still believe in this so strongly that one is tempted to imagine Bigfoot's ride and the whole Indian nation alive again in future generations.